Okay, so I'm going to introduce very quickly our keynote speaker. We're very excited to have Natalia Manola with us today from OpenAire. It's wonderful that she's joining us because this is such a crucial issue for us going forward.
Good morning to everyone, and I would like to give, to say that I'm honored to present to all of you. I wish I were there. Ireland is always one of the best destinations to be, and hopefully, we will. There is going to be opportunities for us to travel to your beautiful country. So. Today, what I'm going to be discussing is about what I would, say end-to-end applications, infrastructures, and services, and you will see why, why this is in our thinking. Because open scholarly communication, what we have found in the past is that it's very much fragmented. We are trying to put all of the services under umbrellas or connected services. I will present how we try to do that in OpenAire. Sometimes we are successful, sometimes we're not, but at least we're trying. It would be nice to see, it's also not would be nice to see, but it's nice to see what is happening now in Ireland with North in open science and open scholarly communication and all of the efforts. And speaking on behalf of the OpenAire members is that we would like to have, all of the initiatives that we see happening succeed, so we can use this as an example in other countries. So by saying that, let me start to say a few things about OpenAire, because I'm not sure that everyone knows who we are. So what do? We are a scholarly communication infrastructure. It's about open science. And the main thing that we're trying to do is to bring together the human capital. Libraries is in our DNA in OpenAire, because most of our members come from libraries, and most of our members have founded from libraries OpenAire. So, and they are the people who have the big knowledge of how this scholarly communication is evolving. And then I would say ICT services and advanced ICT services, because we have good technology teams that they're putting things together. So our three pillars of working first is to align policy. Policies are being shaped up in institutions and in Europe. Our job is to align, to make sure that we don't have too many different flavors, because that causes problems. To operate services and training. So these are the three pillars that we have. Organizational wise, so we were in business, let's say from 2008, from where we, as a consortium, as a tight consortium from EU funding, from 2008 to 2018, where we became a non-profit organization, even though the services were in operation in 2009. So we now have about 18 staff members, a virtual office, 55 members from 38 countries. This is actually an older map that we need to update. And now what we are doing now in the past 2 years, we have been, all the members with internal consultations, we have been revising our statutes. So the idea was to have one member state representative in the beginning. We still maintain that, but then we are opening up to other institutions from the same country in order to participate in OpenAire. We are going to have a campaign starting this January, and you get to know more about it if you want to become members. We already have two Irish institutions as members, so please feel free to visit our site and see, or you can contact us. Now, the strategy as OpenAire, and this is my last slide on the organizational stuff, is that what we found very, very useful, and we are proud of this, because this was our first effort in having the strategy, because until 2020, I would say that we were moving in an ad hoc basis on things that came up in open scholarly communication, things were emerging, so we were jumping on ship and we took initiative. From 2020, we had 1 to 2 year internal discussions and consultations with our members, and we had this first attempt in our strategy, which I have to say that it has been a really one of the most useful things that we did, because we identified 5 priorities. If you think about open scholarly communication, there are a dozen of priorities that we can do. So we grouped them in 5 groups, and then for each of these groups that you can see here is that we have action lines on our 3 pillars: on the services, on the training, on the policies. So what do? So we have a comprehensive document that we invite you to read, because this could be adopted at the national level, it could be adopted at the institutional level, and see, what do you want to do, and, like a checklist to see how you could think about it. Because once you have this, and once we have this now, what we have found is that we have a more concentrated and concerted, concerted on how we are moving along this open scholarly and emerging landscape, which is getting to be rather complex. So how can we transform? So our mission is how to transform to an open scholarly communication ecosystem. So this is, the scholarly communication system exists. So how do we transform to an open scholarly communication ecosystem? I will try to give some facts. First of all, is scholarly communication is in a new era. So we think about, everything is digital, everything is big, connected, and we're talking about scholarly communication that goes beyond publication. So publications is here to stay, publications are here to stay, and because they are the piece of the knowledge that the researchers just put in words, but we need to move beyond that. Data, software, and other research artifacts are slowly and gradually becoming part of the scholarly communication, where scientists communicate by exchanging a piece of software or a piece of data, and this is something that we need to think. Then, in the open scholarly communication era, we need to think about reproducibility. This is now mostly in the minds of funders, because they're thinking of return of investment. They're thinking about research as part of the science, technology, and innovation, and societal challenges. So how can we make sure that things are reproduced, so we can make sure that decisions that we take based on scientific facts are proven? Then we have the artificial intelligence, the LLMs. Everything is infiltrating the world of scholarly communication. And then we have a research life cycle, which is interconnected. And if you see the lines that I put there, is that from the planning to discovering to publishing to assessing, all of this, once you have things open, if you have open science principles in each of these phases, then automatically the others are somehow connected. Because when you're planning, when you're doing a data management plan and you publish it, somebody else knows what you're planning to do, and they know that you can collaborate, you can work with them. When you're looking for discovery and collection, it's very important that you can find things open, out in the open, and the same is for assessing. So because of this interconnectedness and this openness, we need mechanisms in open scholarly communication to respond fast. If we stick to the traditional scholarly communication, that is the way that we know with services, things do not, if you've noticed, they don't move fast. And this is something that we need to think in account. Then, as I said in the beginning, we see fragmentations. We talk about open access publishing models. I'm pretty sure that all of you know the havoc that we have created with APCs, with gold, green, diamond, with the Open Research Europe and the funder platforms. We're talking about publishing processes, open peer review. When you talk to scholarly communication and researchers, the terminology is not clear, and also there are different openness on peer reviewing systems. Then we talk about policies. So we talk about at the national level, the strategy, the policy, and then the institutional, and how much of this adaptation goes. And at the end is we have, and we want to have, a decentralized infrastructure with many players that we need to bring together in a way that each other understands, understand at least there is a common basis. And also that there is this public and commercial, also public versus commercial balance that we need to keep. So this is something that we need to have in mind. Then the other part, if you go on the facts, is infrastructure versus services. What is infrastructure? What is service? Because infrastructure, why am I saying that it makes a difference? Because in OpenAire, and I think in many libraries, you're talking about infrastructure, which is something that is mostly invisible, or it's somewhat visible. And this has, in being such, we have a hard time to convince the funders to fund it. So when you talk about a service, then somebody has something tangible to see, they can understand it, and they can say, yes, I would be willing to pay the service. But for the infrastructure, when we're talking about funding, or if I can say, we should turn this term from funding to co-investing or investing, there are no clear models yet, because it's not very easy to understand. So we have a lack of business and access models, and we have lack of consistent funding or investment. So what we need is now, we need to move into what we believe we need to do, is to business models that capture community and openness. In OpenAire, we are going into this direction. So we want to have, because we have services, as I will show you, but they are mostly funded by public money, but public funding, usually research funding, and not by, or for operations. So what we need to do to discuss is we need to discuss who is paying and how much. And the problem that we have seen here is that people come to us and say, but you're an open scholarly communication infrastructure. Why are we talking about revenues, and why are you talking about people or institutions, not researchers, because we will not take researchers' money? Why are you discussing that? So there is this thing that we need to think about is, what is free and what is open? Open infrastructure is not free. Somebody has to pay, as long as it's understood that the people, the organizations who are paying are the ones that are facilitating the research, and not the researchers. And I think this is something that we need to make it clear. And then the last fact that I want to say is that we are building infrastructures for researchers. And very often, I would say most often, we do not include them in the co-design. And this is what we include: the libraries, we include the funders, the infrastructure providers, and everyone else apart from the researchers. And what we say in many cases is that we have libraries in our constituency. So that means is that libraries are close to researchers. Yes, they are close to researchers. But in many cases, what we would like to have, and we would like to have, to build synergies with libraries, who in their turn, they're going to have programs to engage researchers about building and using and adapting this open scholarly communication. And this is something that we need to think about. It's, we think libraries are there, they are close to researchers, but what we would like to see is libraries and other similar bodies to have programs that engage researchers in building that. This is something, that comes again and again. And just to give you an example, we were talking last week to a startup in the US that they're interested in using the OpenAire graph in order to have their services. And the first question, from a company perspective, is to say, have you done, user requirements and all of this stuff? And I didn't know what to answer because, we have this outreach to researcher, but it's, in many cases, it's not in a tangible way. So those are the challenges, but then, because we don't want to speak always about challenges and, not giving solutions, let's now go into, discussing the possible solutions. And then I will tell you how we are tackling some of them in OpenAire. So the idea for the open scholarly communication is that, we understand there are different components. So we need to make sure that we connect the different pieces together, and interoperability is key. Then we're talking about innovation in open scholarly communication, and we're thinking of these, huge differences, disruptive and all of these things. Sometimes what we have seen is that these small advancements, they make a big difference, and they may bring disruption. So we could use something that already exists, but we can use it, twisted in a different way, and it could be something that will make a difference. Then the thing that everyone is talking about is quality. Okay, so quality not just on the data, on the metadata, but also on the services. What do researchers want? They want to have something that they can trust, and also the libraries to have something they trust. So what we need as an open infrastructure and how we're connecting them together is quality. Then communities, I said again, engage them in the process from an early stage. And then the other thing that we are missing is that ensure that the community is skilled. And the skills, all of us, we are targeting how to skill researchers, but what we also believe is that we need to focus on skilling the executives, the research executives at every level, and also the libraries. So, librarians, I know that one of the most skilled bodies that we have seen. But this is not, again, all around the world, all over Europe. In some countries, for example, we see that, especially in the north, we see a difference. But we need, if we're talking about the European perspective, we need to have equity in also the skills. And then, as I said before, is that we need to follow a balanced approach, from viewing these open scholarly communication infrastructure from the marketing perspective versus community. We need to ingest some of these marketing techniques in the way we are approaching people without losing this openness and community approach. And this is a really, not risky, tight balance. So having said that, the context, so what do we do in OpenAire? In OpenAire, we have services, apart from the network that I will not be discussing a lot today. The network, which is, I think many people keep repeating within OpenAire that the network is our power. And I really believe also, because why? Because it's the ambassadors that they get the requirements for delivering the services or for operating or developing the services. They are the ones that they do it, and they are the ones that they have access to the policymakers in every country, and then also the researchers. So we have a suite of services, and our motto is that services should not be only about the researchers, but should cover other actors in the research and innovation ecosystem. So you will see here that we have, apart from Zenodo, Argos, Explore, Amnesia, for example, if it's for researchers, We have services on the top row that are for repository managers or open access journal managers. We have on the row bottom services that are targeting research executives. So the idea is when you have this R&I research ecosystem, then how you can have the services and how you can connect them together. And I think what we see now in OpenAire and what I will present, we would like to have the parallel at the university or library level. I would say university because now data centers are also being involved. So we would like to see this loop of services interacting and closing together. Because let's be honest, is that researchers are using these and they want to have a seamless access to all of the facilities. How are we doing it? So we have all of these services, and now our major one of the key goals is to understand how they fit into the research life cycle. So we get these graphical things to say, okay, they are the research research life cycle, discover, process, publish, assess, outreach, and all of these things that we have adopted from this one publishing thing. And then we are mapping our services that we have, how they map onto this. And this is the exercise that we did, has been very useful. And I think this is something, again, that we would like to happen at the level of the library. And why is this important? I think this is important in order to educate the librarians, in order to educate the staff of the library, because when they are making decisions on which platform, which service is needed and how to embed it, they need to do that in a holistic way. And this is why it's very important. Then, as we said, is that there's not going to be one system that does it all. So we expect, even at the university level, to have many systems that will be interconnected. So I'm a researcher, and I'm doing I'm using the data center. I'm using the data center to process my data, and then I publish it. So from the publication, from the processing, I need to have this data repository that I will just click a button in order to deposit and publish the data set. And then I'm writing my publication or my whatever I'm writing. So I need to link it together. So I need PIDs. And then somebody else is assessing me. So they need to go to these repositories and data centers, and with one look, they can see what I have produced, and also how many people have cited me, and all these things that it's all connected. So interoperability is key to here. So whenever we are designing systems, we have this interoperability framework, and this is something that OpenAire has started since the 2005, even before OpenAire, the group that we were. And now we see that this is transitioning into the EOS interoperability framework, and we're happy to see that things are being adopted. Now, what we are doing here in OpenAire, one of the key things that, and I will explain the transition, is the OpenAire graph. This is a key asset. This is one of our core business now in open science infrastructure, because we are connecting things together. So it's the research project, products, publications, data sets, software, others like protocols, where they're coming from, who has been created, from which funding organization, where it's deposited, open access or non-open access, citations, linked to services and tools. So we're expanding because of EOS, the European Open Science Cloud. We're expanding this to cover facilities. So to have a 360 view of the research and innovation ecosystem. So it's global coverage. And then on top of this, we have a layer that we are, which is computing, data computing intensive, to have indicators and visualizations. How we're doing it, I'm not going to, this is a high level picture. So this is where we combine sources from around the world. Then we have here the sources like ORCID, Crossref, and Open Citations, and all of these that we consider them to be part of the global infrastructure. Then we have a big data AI-driven infrastructure to extract information, connect things together, because let's be honest, is that when people are publishing or when they are depositing, there is a lot of metadata missing here. And then we have a community to develop indicators and validate data. I will not go into this picture, but what I wanted to see is that what I wanted to highlight is these services that I showed a few slides before in boxes. You can see it over here again, Argos, Amnesia, Zenodo, but this is how we interconnect them with each other. So it's about PIDs, it's about APIs, mainly it's about IDs and APIs and protocols to exchange data all over the place. And underlying this all is an AAI, authentication and authorization system, that is able to connect people together. So the ideal world is that I'm using my institutional authentication system, and I can go to Zenodo, I can, grab, something from Zenodo, I can put it in Argos, and somebody else can validate it. So we have lots of ideas on how these things are interconnected. I would like to go over now how we view the world for publishing tool assessments. And then, you can think about how this can apply in the local environment. So how we start in OpenAire is we start with something that we do not own. Open access journals, repositories, quiz systems, catalogs from research infrastructures. We do not own Zenodo. We are a collaborator with Zenodo, Episciences, and other platforms out there. There is a plethora of platforms out there. And we do not own it. And these are investments by universities, by performing research funding and performing organizations, by national infrastructures. We come now on top and we say, how can we use the OpenAire interoperability guidelines and best practices in order to get this data into OpenAire? Okay, into something that we connect, not into OpenAire. It happens to be the OpenAire instance, but if we all agree on these guidelines, metadata guidelines, API guidelines, and protocols, then OpenAire and a plethora and other providers can come and do and get this data. So we are still at the harvesting level, where one of the question marks that I would like to put here is, when is it time for us to move away from the harvesting and do something more clever? And this is something that we need to discuss. So based on this compliance of data sources, and the compliance of the data source means for OpenAire is that we aggregate this, we have this metadata validator, and then we create reports. And we would like to pass information back to repository managers in order for them to improve their processes. And by what metadata you're exposing and what we would like to have, then you will see that there are opportunities for a repository or a journal or one of these sources is to improve also the internal practices. We also get the PDFs because the language is becoming more and more important, and the knowledge from these PDFs is becoming more important. And then we also would like to get these views and downloads in order to have not just the citations, but also to see the traction around these research artifacts around the world, because we are able to connect things together. So then everything goes into the OpenAire graph, which we complement with sources from trusted and authoritative sources around the world. So you can see Crosses for data sites, DOIB, DOIJ, Open Citations, OpenAPC, and I'm pretty sure that I'm missing some. But what we are doing here now, you're talking about an operation that it's a data intensive operation that we are running every month, is to try to connect everything together in a sense that makes, in putting, enriching it, making relationships between different objects, text mining, machine learning, everything that you can do. So what we do actually is we get this graph, we classify in fields of science down to level 6, I believe. We extract the sustainable development goals. We do data citations and software citations, and we have a graph at the end that we try. This is a never-ending process to have everything in good order. And then at the end, what we have is we have the explore, we have the monitor, we have services that can be used by institutions and research organizations. And now we are moving into this, also we have a project that we're doing profiles for open science assessment. So this is the way that we see the world. And then we have services like OpenOrgs that help us to curate the organization data, because organizations and organization names appear in different formats in publications, in different formats in metadata, in different formats in registries and SMS. We have Argos, which is the data management plan, where you can see it could be a very useful tool, not as a data management plan only, but when researchers are doing their projects, is that they can really nice and have a small graph of their project altogether. And then we have the broker, where we believe that if OpenAire is spending all of this money and effort in order to enrich the metadata, then we want this good metadata or better metadata to find its way back into the repositories, and so they can increase, or journals, and they can increase their quality. So this is the whole cycle as we see it. And let me say to you, it's very, it requires a lot of people, different skills, and from outreach, from communication, from talking to repository managers, to talking to these big infrastructure providers. It's a main effort. And all of this in EOSC, because we are well embedded in EOSC, it's part, linked with the persistent identifiers and through the persistent identifiers and federated authentication and authorization, we will be offering this to the European Open Science Cloud. And I'm happy to say that here is that the Commission announced a few days ago the winners. They have a big procurement on how we can build the core services of EOSC. And we're happy to say that OpenAire was in one of the winning consortium, and we will offer, and our main job is to offer what they call the metadata knowledge graph for the EOSC portal to be based on OpenAire, on the OpenAire graph. Now, what is the national approach? Because this is something that is coming now more and more. We have the North initiatives, and in Europe, more and more they're talking about in EOSC, and apologies for being too much on the EOSC, but this is something that we see as a policy vehicle and a funding vehicle for many countries to get their shape and get their act together on open scholarly communication, and concentrate efforts and really deliver something that is well connected with the world. So if we see this, what we would like to see, and I think this is happening in Ireland, for example, is we would like, instead of OpenAire going into all of these repositories, is we would like to see a small, national aggregator or a small OpenAire, or whatever you want to call it, that is taking ownership of how the repositories, the journals, the quiz systems They follow the standards, the guidelines, how you connect them together, and you build the national graph, if you want. Okay, and then this national graph could be connected to the OpenAire graph. We can exchange information. And what does this mean for us? For us, it would mean is that the OpenAire resources, we rely on the member states and the national initiatives to take ownership of the quality aspects of everything, because the local landscape, and also to see knowing and connecting to the OpenAire. It means that we have that you get skills also. We share economies, we share resources. Everything we hope is going to be better. And then on the other side is, as we're building now the open access monitor, so we are building on the OpenAire graph, and this would be an excellent, but then you own it. The Irish community owns this monitor, and it's something that OpenAire is just in between. So this is the ideal scenario that we would like to see. Now, the North-led open access initiatives is that, first of all, as I said in the beginning, we have an excellent, we see that this is an excellent national initiative. And what I really like about this is how the community is engaged. And it's really nice for us to see. So it's bringing the community together. It's building infrastructure, and it's connecting the European ecosystem from the start, at least on the on the monitor. I wish this was happening in the repository initiative. I'm not sure what is happening there. And also you could consider, because it's about politics, we are doing infrastructure and services, but some people, think about the politics, is that what you're doing there in all these North open access initiatives is a very big step towards the implementation of what Europe and the Commission calls the EOSC national node. The EOSC national node has many more things, but as far as the open science is concerned, this is one of the big steps. What are we doing in the open access monitor? I think most of you know that we are creating, based on the graph, we are creating 5 dashboards. One is on the institutional repositories, RFOs, RPOs, research performing organizations, for researchers, and one on the national scene. For us, for OpenAire, it has been a blessing in disguise, because based on that and the really nice collaboration we have with the team that is monitoring this tender monitor, and the advisory board, is that we have put all of the machinery, especially we have the services, on the quality of the data. And based on this, as an exemplar, the quality of the data, because we have focused on this case, it has increased exponentially, and we are happy to see that, really happy to see that. How do we do that? We have all of the services that I described before, and we have, a bunch of services going to the OpenAire graph, and the monitor is somewhere in between. So we're going to have a view of the graph for the open access monitor, adapted to the needs of the tender, which are very many, I have to say, and very strict. And this is, this is what we want to do. So we're going to have a service that is, I think it's will be one of the exemplar services in Europe. And then once we have it, we need to focus all as a community, because then I don't see that OpenAire is the contractor and the Irish is the client. The Irish, the North is the client. But what I see is a synergy is that we can make it together. And based on the OpenAire graph and the monitor, you will see that there will be many short. How do you call them, drawbacks or shortcomings in the incoming data, which is very institutional based. And this is where, based on the results that we see, is that we need to go back into the roots and see how we we increase, and you as a community, you increase the quality of the services at the library, which may be journals or repositories or pre-systems. I will not go into the architecture because I would like I have in my view 5 minutes left, and it's something that is it's there, but we have it, and this is one of the best collaborations I think in OpenAire that we have. Closing, I would like to say just some things on what are the next frontier in terms of infrastructure that we see based on the projects that we collaborate in, and second is on what is happening on the world. I have 3 slides, and I will also say one more because I forgot to put it in, to be honest. Is about scientific knowledge graphs. Is that what we see is that in OpenAire, when we discussed about the OpenAire research graph, this is how we call it back then. I think it was in 2017 in Debrecen. All our members involved, and when we talked, the technical people talked about the knowledge graph or scientific graph. Is we had the members saying we do not understand what this is. We do not change the name. So we made an effort to educate them, and then since then, I think the scientific knowledge graph, the terminology has been, I think most of the people know about it, and if they don't, one of the things in libraries is that we should educate them about what is a graph, because we now have catalogs in technical terms. We have catalogs in libraries where everything is mainly on the record, inside the record, and we may use some vocabularies. The knowledge graph is a more complex things where we have different entities by their own ontologies, their own data model, and then they are connected to each other. So it's very easy, once you have a graph, to traverse from different type of record to different. So you have the funding record, the funder record, and you have the publication record. It's not everything that is in one place, but they are interconnected. And technically, once you have that, you can connect things together. And this is very important. Google, has it's a Google terminology that they have this knowledge graph. So the Google table is one big knowledge graph because you can go from things to the other. And we're talking about scientific knowledge graph. So a quiz system, for example, could be considered a knowledge graph because it has different entities linked together. So what we're doing in this project SciLake is we're trying to do is to say interoperability of different graphs, especially with research communities, because in OpenAire and in libraries, we can have the scholarly communication graph, which has, let's say, an overview, a shallow overview of the meta research. But in scientific domains, we have the knowledge graphs that they have the knowledge of the scientific domain, which may be different from one to the other. Think about, for example, the neurosciences and e-brains, and think about the environment. They have same approaches, but different concepts and different terminology. So what we are doing in this project is to see how all of these knowledge graphs of the communities are building. We can interconnect them together. And this is something, why is it important to libraries? Because when you are having your discovery services and you're paying all of these companies to do the discovery services, they better start thinking about, that researchers will ask more than publications, or when they find a publication, they will want to go to the artifacts linked to this publication. Then the other thing that we are discussing is about the open infrastructure for responsible research assessment. We are starting a QARA. I hope that most of you are familiar with QARA. It's a European/international initiative about the research assessment that includes also Open Science one part. So how can we do a reform and assessment? And if we're talking about an open scholarly communication, how can this open scholarly communication be completely open and accessible, but also to serve the needs for assessment? So we're talking about getting data like citation, like views and downloads, like all of this connected. How how can we make it open, and how can we make it usable to be to to be fit for research assessment? So this is, as we're building all these monitors for Ireland, as we're building all these repository networks, I think this is something, that we need to have in mind, because it can be used there. So, it's the idea is, first of all, is to go beyond publications, is to include open sciences, open science, whatever, I'm trying to do that. The profile, how much of open science, does a research institution has, what are the different indicators, and also to move away from commercial sources that are really closed and they cost a lot. So this is the second thing. Before I go to my final slide, is that the other frontier that we are starting to work on is this connection between knowledge graphs, data management plans, and validators for fairness of data. So we're starting an Open Science Trails. It's called Open Science Trails, the project. We're starting in February with 40 partners. There is the Technical University of Dublin involved in this as a pilot, where we say, when we allow, when we make people, when we push researchers to do a data management plan, because somebody has to do that, has to evaluate it. First of all, how can we evaluate is if the data management plan is good enough? So this is for funders and institutions. Then to say, can we use this data management plan as a tool for the researchers as a guidance in order to say, what data there or publications or software they will be reusing, what they will be creating, and how this is connecting together. So just getting a small graph of the project that they rely on, the before, the in between, and the after, and give them indicators, especially guidance on, on the fairness of the data, on how they are well connected, on PIDs, on license, and all that. I think we are waiting, because it's going to be an exciting project. And then last but not least is that we know everything, you all know everything about GBT, and we know GBT and services on top of ChatGPT, how they are, infiltrating now researchers, and they are using, sometimes I'm using them. So, let's be honest with ourselves, is how can we, as a scientific community, as the gatekeepers, if you want, of the open scholarly communication, how can we infiltrate this world in order to get things going? So what we see now is that the open infrastructure is something about, the results. So the results, somebody is doing a research and they're creating results, and we interconnect them like what we do in the graph, and this is the open infrastructure. What we believe in is that we need to move this open infrastructure to expand it and extend it in order to get services like large language models, that they are fit for science, that they are fit for use in the scientific endeavor. And we want to do that, and building a large language model is not trivial. Okay, building a large language model, if you want to talk about foundation large language models, we need tens of millions in order to do that. But in order to get something that is open source, like Google's or OpenAire, not OpenAI, but Google or Llama from Meta, and then fine tune it, it could cost 10 million, and it's something that we can have as a start. I know that Europe is, the European Commission will be funding, will be giving a lot of funding in order to get these foundational language models in Europe, so Europe can build them, because we also have this peculiarity, nice peculiarity of the different languages. So we need to somehow get this, in place in a way that we own it as Europe, we own it, and that we trust it. But by doing that, this open infrastructure, because it's getting now large, is scaled up, is that public and private partnerships are a must, because we cannot do it ourselves. I invite you to, I will share this. I invite you to do this, to go to this, if you haven't been in Open Science Fair in Madrid in end of September, we had a really nice panel, 2-hour panel, about AI for and with open science. So we had a person from a startup in Silicon Valley presenting science-based, what they're doing, actually services that they are doing for researchers using GPT-like services. And actually, we were talking to them last week, and they said, we opened up with a subscription model for researchers, about $100 per year. And in the first week, they already had 8,000 subscriptions. So that means is that researchers are really interested in this kind of thing. And I think as libraries and as infrastructure, we have it's our duty to work with them in order to make it, so that we can trust it. Okay. And then the other thing was in this presentation, which I really liked this panel. I was moderating it, but I really liked the presentation. Was my colleague from Athena Research Center that we work in OpenAire. So this is where the slide, this slide comes from. Is that he advocated on this, how this open infrastructure that we view now is too narrow, and we need to move into this, big broader view of open infrastructure. And last but not least, there was this lady from NASA, Kaylin Bugby, I think, that she said about this, how they're building for the scientific discovery in NASA, how they're partnering with IBM, and we're talking about NASA and IBM, so it's lots of money. But this is the only way that they could do it, is a private-public partnership, and how they're doing it, because they are thinking of moving into the next thing. And this is how I would like to close. I think I've got all my time. Thank you so much for listening. And I would be really, really happy to, to have a discussion if we have time. I cannot hear you.
And thank you so much, Natalia. That was so interesting. We'd listened to you for so long. We were just so tight for time today. But thank you so much. It was fantastic. Do we have a minute or two for questions? Would that be okay?
Yep.
Fantastic. You want to see?
For me, if I may say, is that, it's hard to give the presentation without looking at the room, the people in the room. It's just, I hope that this was in the, it touched upon some of the things that will be discussed in the seminar. If anyone's talking, I cannot hear them, because Ken, you're muted.
So we'll need to repeat the request. We'll need to repeat the question for you.
Now I can hear you.
The director, Manola, we know each other pretty well. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Yes, great. This is a kind of a bigger question, but given the theme of today, looking back and to look forward, and given that you are, the OpenAire is essentially, you said the strength is networks. Could you say something, about how it works the network has been to getting OpenAire to where it is today.
Susan, I can see you, but I know that you're speaking, but you're breaking up, and I couldn't really understand the question. I'm sorry.
Natalia, I think I
Repeat it on the headset, please.
Oh, the headset.
Yeah.
So, ready question. Okay, hello, Natalia.
Yes. Yes.
Susan, your question was about networks. Yeah, if you repeat it again, I'll repeat it.
I just was asking Natalia to maybe just given the theme of today, how important is the network of OpenAire being in getting to where it is today, which is a massive European infrastructure.
Okay. So Natalia, she's asking about, Susan is asking about how important the network was in terms of today's team and looking back in the history to bringing OpenAire where it is today. So it's the value of the network in bringing OpenAire.
Yes, I thank you, Susan. I think, I said this, that the motto is that, our network is our power. And this, it's not just a motto, it's just something that shows how we are, how we view the network. So the network has been instrumental in setting up OpenAire and in the evolving of OpenAire, right? On these services, it has been, shaping the services, the network, reaching out to national members and researchers, the network, training, how we are all getting together in order to share the experiences, the network. How I can go on, but without the network, what would we have? We would have a bunch of technical people delivering services, right? And it's not enough. It's not enough. This is why I said in the beginning, it's the division of human capital that we have and ICT. If we only had the human capital, I think we would be an organization that we would have working groups and we would discuss things, but we wouldn't have the services. If we had the services, we would work as a commercial company, just delivering services and going out for revenues. I wouldn't say profits. One is feeding to the other. That's all I'm saying. But the power of the network and Susan, this is what I like, at least in the engagement of I see in the Irish Open Access Monitor. I like the engagement that I see, and I like that how the people come. I don't know if there is an official network other than North, but invest in the network. Yeah.
Natalia, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been so inspiring and so great to listen to you, to hear from you. And honestly, we'd listen to you for so much longer, but we're tight on time. So thank you again.
Thank you. I will stay to listen to, can I stay and listen to one or more talks, or, do I have to log off, or,
Sorry, say that again.
Can I, if I stay, will I be able to listen to one or the next keynote?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, please stay exactly where you are. You're fine.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you very
I will
much.
just, okay, great. Thank you.